Hello, everyone, and welcome back to 15 with Fosca, the podcast. My guest today is Alatia Bradley Bach, a native Texan who worked in publishing and real estate in New York before moving to Florence with her family about 7 years ago. She is now a certified Kundalini yoga teacher with a very dedicated following here in town. Thank you, Alatia, for accepting my invitation to come on the podcast today.
Thank you for asking me. This is such an honor. I'm excited.
I am so excited. And I also want to thank you for being so flexible and accommodating because this was a hard one to get scheduled. And so it's also the last one that I'm recording for this season. So I feel that this is very special. Yeah, I'm super excited. So I want to start with your Italy story, which is where I often start with my guests. And I want to know more about that. So you moved from New York to Florence with your family in 2019. What was behind that decision to move here?
Oh my goodness. My husband was ending a 3-year job contract and said, what do you think about us taking the children to Europe for a year? And it worked out perfectly with their ages. One was going in 4th grade, one was going in 10th grade. And I said, okay, great. And it was actually funny because I'd just come back from Madrid and I thought, oh, that would be the perfect city. I've always wanted to speak Spanish. And I thought it was so chic. And I'd lived in New York City for 30 years. It never occurred to me to not live in it. We were ready to leave New York, but not, I don't know, this idea of a small town. And so then anyway, he said, Madrid was on the table for maybe 3 or 4 weeks till he said, I want to go to a small town. And anyway, we settled on Florence and we thought we were coming for 9 months, like putting the children in. And we were very New York, we were New Yorkers. I lived there for 31 years. And we would meet people like you do when you first get here. How long are you here? What are you doing? Oh, we're here for a year. And everyone said, oh, we said that when we came 7 years ago, 5 years ago. And we would come home at night and say what's wrong with these people? Don't they know how to work the plan? It was just so not a part of my worldview that you would decide to do something for a period of time and then not do it. This idea that it could just be what it became. So anyway, that's how we got here. And we loved it from the moment we arrived, which by the way, we arrived in weather just like this. And by October, our kids were asking to stay. So yeah.
That's incredible.
Yes. No one wanted to leave.
No one wanted to leave. And so then you finally understood. You were like, oh, now I get why nobody is sticking to the plan, obviously. Yes. So what, right. Besides, of course, because Florence checks all the boxes, it really does for a lot of us. And for kids, it's a great place to be.
It's interesting because I just assumed that I was like, oh, Florence, perfect. I mean, we did need a place with a good school. Do you see with an international school? Yeah. And one of the reasons we didn't go to Portugal, where people, I think at the time were all going, was I thought, I don't know that I want to be stuck on the Iberian Peninsula. If we go to Italy, we can run around via trains and planes. It seemed very simple. And also it had so much culture because I basically assumed that the kids would go to school and my husband and I would have all this free time because we both have been working so much. We'd spend time together. We would do cultural things. Maybe we'd learn to cook. But I didn't assume that we would fall into this unbelievable community and have a million friends. I thought we would just be these expats who maybe knew 5 people. I didn't actually know. I mean, I think so many people come here and live here or study here and then want to live here. I was not one of those people. It was literally like we chose it on a map. I had been here in, I don't know, 94. So anyway, and it worked out so beautifully. And the thing that I didn't expect, first of all, I didn't expect this unbelievably welcoming, fun, exciting, interesting, community. But I also didn't expect to absolutely adore living in a tiny town.
Yeah, especially coming from New York. And, Florence is easy. It's an easy city. You can walk everywhere. It has a great community of super interesting people. It draws a lot of, and it gives you enough so you don't feel like you're living in the middle of nowhere. But if you want the quiet small town thing, you have that every day.
Well, and you run into your friends. I mean, it's funny because New York is much more simpatico than to Florence than I would think if you lived in
Hmm.
Dallas, Texas. Because,
Yeah.
I'm used to walking everywhere. I'm used to carrying my groceries home. I'm used to grabbing my like cleaning, it's sort of the everyday small town village thing and
Yeah.
the neighborhood factor. Because, what I really enjoy so much is that not only do I have an amazing community of friends, because I had that in New York, but that I see them every day. I run into them.
Yeah.
It's easy to make plans. So there's a really strong sense of community here that I adore.
Yeah. I'm going to get to community in a second, but I need to know first a little more about your professional journey because you did have this like extremely glamorous, interesting life in New York. Um, and I really want to know how Kundalini yoga came into your life. Where were you? And when did you have this sort of epiphany that this was what you wanted to dedicate your life to?
It was evolving. I did. So I started out in magazines. I worked at Condé Nast. So I worked for Vogue and Vanity Fair, and my final place was Rolling Stone, and then I sold luxury real estate in Manhattan. Um, and believe it or not, I was introduced to Kundalini yoga in Los Angeles. I used to go to Los Angeles all the time on business and for fun, and I had a friend there who practiced Kundalini with actually one of the old school greats who learned from the yogi who brought it to the States. And I would go, and it was unbelievable. It was like 200 people in this dojo where kids would do karate in the afternoon, but it was at like 8:30 in the morning. Um, and I loved it. And I felt so good. It was fun to do. And I felt great afterwards. But in New York, where I lived, there was one Kundalini studio and it wasn't close to me at all. It was in that awkward, like, I couldn't get there from my house.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
Yeah.
it was awkward. And I had small children. The classes were 90 minutes and it was going to take 30 to 40 minutes to get there and back. You know what I mean? Like, so an hour. So it was like this 4 hour thing that I was like, okay, I can't do this. And so I just did Pilates every day and I lived my life. But I've been a meditator for 14 years. So I've always done that. I've always been a seeker. But anyway, so when I moved to Florence, I was like, oh, somewhere along the line, I was looking into Kundalini yoga. I was like, I have time. And there's a woman here who's in our expat community. And I was like, oh, wow. So it's Allison Volpe. I reached out to her. And
Yeah.
so I started learning. It was actually kind of funny too, because I found out we had a friend of a friend, and I kept waiting for this friend to introduce us over the summer because, no one's around. And I was like, I'm sure I could just reach out to her myself. Anyway, so I started going to yoga with her in fall 2020.
Okay. Oh.
And it was like right after COVID, but we were practicing outside at Plaza San Nicolo, and I loved it, and it was so much fun. And basically, that's what happened. And I was thinking about your question about, when did I know this was the thing? It was a process because
Mm.
essentially I just kept doing this, and then I wanted more. My journey of Kundalini is really funny because Allison's the only teacher here. So I mean, of course, because I'm a New Yorker, I did Pilates 7 days a week. So I had to do yoga 7 days. So, I mean, I literally was like, Allison was my person.
Yeah.
And one day I was lying on the sofa and I was like, I have to find some yoga. And especially then, I didn't speak any Italian. I mean, I'm not sure I could do it in Italian now either, but I was like, oh, Switzerland. Like they speak a lot of English in Switzerland. So I literally Googled Swiss Kundalini yoga classes in English. And what popped up was this Swiss Kundalini yoga festival in
Mm.
Montreux, Switzerland in July.
Mhm.
I've always wanted to go to Montreux. By the way, this is not how I thought I was going to Montreux. There's a little tiny town on top of Montreux called Caen, and it's where all the hotel schools are.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, my view was absolutely amazing, and it was the most basic place I've ever been. But anyway, I went to this Swiss Kundalini festival all by myself. Everyone was like, "You're doing what?" And it was actually hilarious because when I got there, they're like, "You came here from Italy?" Like, I mean, it was so random, and it was still COVID. It was
Yeah.
2022. So we were traveling. Anyway, and I went there and within minutes, like I found like the first night at dinner, people just are friendly and sit down. I found a woman who was Greek, but she lived in Milan. And she's like, oh, there's a woman who lives in Vienna, but she's a Texan. Um, and she teaches anyway. It just sort of from there, I started putting the people together to be able to like have more input. And really, the only reason I went to teacher training was because I wanted to know more. There's a
Yeah.
funny thing about yoga is that nobody explains anything. I mean, that's kind of what makes my classes different is that I feel that I wanted to know. I had to go to Switzerland and do a 200-hour teacher training to find out like some basic stuff that we do in class. Um, and then that led to more and more and more. So that was really, that was how I found it and then how I started exploring it.
So, for those who don't really know much about Kundalini yoga, how is it different from other practices, or how would you sort of spell it out for us?
Um, Well, I had a pat answer for you, which I always say, but I mean, but my husband was like, you have to say my answer. I'm like, okay, fine. He's a public speaker and an author, but he's really true. He's like, most people have tried yoga and many, many people don't like it. He's like, you've got the people who love yoga, and there's a lot of people who've tried yoga and they don't like it. And as he said, because it's excruciating. And I was like, really? But his big point was that people think they can't do yoga because they're not good at it, because it's these
Mm,
really strenuous, difficult yoga poses. And they
yeah,
think, I tried that, I couldn't do it. I'm not going again. I don't care what it's called, whether it's called Kundalini, Ashtanga, blah, 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 blah. And that is
right.
not what Kundalini is. What makes Kundalini, I think, really unique is anyone can do it. It is a series of poses. We call them asanas. They tend not to be standing on one leg. Most of them are seated. So anyone can do them. And you don't have to have your legs crossed. But anyway, it's poses, pranayam, breath work, chanting, singing, and meditation. And every class has all of those things. So if it's really different from any other yoga, is that it works faster
Mm,
because you're resetting your entire nervous system. When you coordinate breath and movement and then you add chanting, you're much more quickly able to meditate. And then the erudite, really proper answer, which I used to give people, and it's very, very true, is that all yoga is the same. Yoga is about calming the fluctuations of the mind. So, how you get there, is yoga. So, that's what they would tell you in India. That's what the Vedas say. And that's really true for someone like me who practices yoga. But for every man on the street, I think it's really important to know that like Kundalini is this accessible thing that's really, really fun. Um, and that you get big bang for your buck. So
and I mean, your classes are wildly popular, and you have a
thank
really,
you.
no, it's true, and you have a really devoted following here. And, we talked a little bit about at the beginning, we talked about community, but I want to talk a little more about that because I'm on your WhatsApp group for your classes. Unfortunately, I have not yet made it to a class. And now I'm like, I need this so much in my life. Like, like, I love having you in my life as a friend, but like, I need Kundalini yoga. So it's gonna have to happen. But something that I love when I read these, WhatsApp messages that come through is just everyone is that you've created this beautiful community. So can we talk a little more about that? Was that something, I mean, when you started out, obviously you wanted to share the love, you wanted to share your knowledge, you wanted to do this great this generosity you have to share your knowledge and your passion with others. But did you expect that you would build such an immense, like, important community of people here?
First of all, thank you. It is so gratifying to hear that, first of all, that you read the chat and that you're engaged and that you've heard about the classes and people respond so well. That means so much to me because it is, I'm really giving of myself. No, I didn't expect any of this. I live by this idea of um, you can't keep it unless you give it away. I just happen to always like I'm a big sharer. If you like my
Mhm.
dress, if you like the food at my house, if you whatever you know this about me, like I share everything with everyone. I am not proprietary. I
Mhm.
think like if I found something great, I'm one of those people who like wants to call all my friends. It's ironic that I'm not a social media poster because um I'm sort of like that in my daily life, like, oh my God, I just found
You
this great
are.
thing.
You
And
are.
so, but what's really interesting is that I had to teach 3 classes to get my certification, all of which I never intended to teach ever. I've done 400 hours of Kundalini teacher training. I've done 2 classes. I've flown to Zurich and I've flown to America, every 3 months for a week for years at a time. But I still didn't intend to teach. I just didn't know enough. I wanted the whole picture because it was so meaningful to me and it worked that I was like, I want to understand why it works. And anyway, I had to do 3 classes to get the certification. And I want you to know that I was deathly afraid, which is so strange. Like
I
I've
would
been,
never, ever imagine that.
no, I was so shocked. I'm like, wait a second. I have been a public speaker. Like I have given presentations in boardrooms with, 50 people. Like there's nothing about standing up in front of a room that scares me. Um, I mean, I have a lot of tools for fear. So what's actually really interesting is when I realized I was so afraid, I was sitting in this teacher training because you have to finish it by a certain time. And we were learning this breath walk, which I don't know if you knew. I taught this like 3 years ago. We used to have a thing called Ladies Adventure here. And I was like, basically, it's the Sata Nama Kirtan Kriya, but you do it while you're walking. And I was like, wait, this I can do. And this I can do with Ladies Adventure. And so I literally sent a text from the classroom in California, like, can I do this thing? Because I also know that if I get it on a schedule and then I have to do it,
We'll do it.
I can do it. So, and that wasn't really scary because again, I mean, essentially what the fear is I've always sold a product. And so there was something very vulnerable about sitting in front of people. I always say, like, essentially naked, not because I was wearing a leotard, but because I wasn't standing behind Vogue. I wasn't selling an apartment. I was like, here's a technology that works, but they're not reading the technology. They're not watching someone else do it. They're trusting me to impart this path. So then I mean, okay, so I did the breath walk. That was amazing. Everyone loved it. And now I have to teach the class. And I want you to know that I handpicked these people that would not judge me. It was literally like my teacher, another teacher, my husband, my lifelong childhood friend who'd moved here, who didn't do yoga. So I was like, she'll have no idea. I mean, it was literally like 6 people. And it was just nothing I've ever experienced. When people talk about things like being afraid to speak or social anxiety, I have empathy, but I don't know what that looks like. I was so frightened. I memorized every single part of the class, that. I was traumatized about the music. Anyway, within 5 minutes of the class, it was like easy breezy. I know how to do this. This is the most fun thing I've ever done. Super gratifying. Loved it. Like I was inspired. I was all the good things. I felt so good. And then everyone had to fill out a questionnaire and everybody put, you're a natural. It feels like you've been doing this your whole life. What? And then, I mean, I had to do 2 more and then I opened them up and then it was really gratifying because there were people like, how come you didn't invite me? And I was like, because I was too afraid to like open this up. There was something really, really transformational about just admitting that I was afraid to do this because it was not in my character. And then I'm a natural connector. I naturally help people. And I had to sort of sit down and realize, oh, wait, maybe this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I sold advertising in real estate because it made money. I was an art historian. I couldn't afford to go to work at the Met. I didn't want to sell paintings. I thought it was like schmatas, but hanging on the wall. And so I sold ad space, which I didn't even know that was a job. Yeah, I mean, you'll appreciate this because we're the same age. There was this moment when I was walking my dog, and yes, I tended towards the grandiose my whole life. I was walking my dog in 1994, and it occurs to me, I am never going to be on the cover of Time magazine. And it was because I was like, I'm not in a job. I basically, in some weird way, I was bred for greatness. Like my family always said, you can do anything you want to do. And I'm like, okay, well,
Yeah.
great. I sell ads in a magazine, like not exactly, changing lives. But what was interesting at 24 is I had this kind of epiphany that I would change lives one person at a time. That I was a really, really unbelievable friend, and I was incredibly loyal, and community and family and chosen friends as family meant a lot to me, and that would be my contribution. And I've never really thought about it again in terms of like contribution in world. But that it was interesting. I had this moment where I was like, wait a second, maybe I am supposed to be doing this. It seems really natural and it works and people love it. So, I mean, and it really was a result of those 3 classes where everyone's like, it was in the summer because I wanted to get it done before summer because I was afraid if I let the panic go for, it was
You would
like
never do it.
May. And so I was like, okay, get this done before July. And so everyone said, well, are we going to do it in the fall? And I said, okay. So it started out as once a week. And then someone asked for another class. So we do it twice a week. And that's how it all happened.
It's an amazing journey. And actually, I'm really happy that you shared this with me and with our listeners, because I don't think a lot of people realize that, first of all, those moments, I think those epiphanies we have, I think maybe somewhere deep inside of you, you knew this was your calling. And that's why it scared you so much. You were never scared to sell real estate. You were never scared to interview or to meet all those, famous people you met or whatever when you were working in the publishing industry, right? But this shook you because this was your true vocation. And that you need to be ready for that. And you need to say, okay, this is what I'm meant to be doing. That's huge, Alatia. You should have been
Thank
scared.
you.
I mean, that comes like I'm getting chills because it really like I just think that sometimes it's hard for us, especially like, I don't know, just the way we were raised, the way we're both alums of Seven Sisters colleges, like this kind of achievement oriented, very social, very whatever. It's very hard for us to admit any kind of vulnerability or any kind of fear. And I love the fact that you stepped right into it and you were like, you know what though? I'm going to do this on my own terms. I'm going to protect myself. But like while you were saying it, I was like, of course you're a natural born teacher. And a lot of people are not.
Exactly. And I think fear is something so important to talk about because, and I love that you brought that up. I have a very healthy relationship with fear now. I am not afraid of fear. Fear is an emotion and it's such a good motivator, but we don't talk about fear enough,
We don't.
and this idea in the practices that I do, um, it's not like if I meditated more or if I went to more yoga or if I was more evolved, I wouldn't have fear. That's not what this is about. Fear is a natural human emotion. What the practices give me and provide others is a way to deal with the fear. So when I realized how frightened I was, I know exactly what to do. Oh, so let's get something on the schedule. Oh, let's invite people who I know aren't judgy. Like, let's invite the same people to my first yoga class that I would call if I were crying or upset. Do you see what I'm trying to say? Like, let's invite
Absolutely.
good friends. And I just think, that's just using my own example. I think it's really important that we are having a human experience. I experience this now that I am a teacher, now that people come to me, is, these practices are just giving us tools. They're not taking away the human experience, but it lessens in intensity and everything becomes easier. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. One of my most favorite people is Ram Dass, and you can listen to him on, I think it's called Ram Dass Here and Now for free on podcast. And it's amazing. I'm a huge believer in filling our minds with really positive things. So don't walk around listening to the news, walk around listening to something really positive. Um, and, he always says souls come to earth to evolve and that we're just in spiritual kindergarten. And so, I feel like Kundalini or yoga or all the things I teach, this is just a jungle gym. These are just like the things we're doing while we're here to get the skills to do the next thing.
I love that. That's a beautiful way to go through life. And I think there are two things I want to ask you sort of as follow-ups to this. One, and I'll break them down. One is when someone comes to your class for the first time, what do you think most surprises them about your teaching? And also, I would just say Kundalini in general, as opposed to maybe other yoga classes they've taken, or maybe they've never even. But what do you think is the element that most surprises people about your classes?
I think the whole thing is surprising because if you've been to like power yoga or even traditional other yoga classes, you're sort of used to down dog into like a flow. Do you know what I'm talking about? You're used to like these warrior positions, and you can come to Kundalini and like, we do some stretches and we do some movements, but sometimes you can come and I'm telling you to put your hands and your feet on the floor and hop like a kangaroo and, make noises if you want. And then they're singing. And sometimes, I mean, most people don't really care, but it's funny. It's funny to see people's reactions. Um, and I think they're surprised by the whole thing. And then I think they're really surprised by how well they feel when it's over. I had one person walk out of a class one time. I taught class right after the United States election last 2 years ago. And it didn't even dawn on me. It was like the next day. And there was a lot going on, with people coming into the room. And someone came for the first time and then they left. And as a teacher, you definitely notice. I mean, I only have 15 people. You notice when they're leaving. And you wonder, like, what was it about? I mean, I'm way past the was it me? And if it is me, that's okay. You know what I mean? Like, we're not all, that's why there's other yoga teachers and other yoga traditions and other yoga
Exactly.
classes. My
Exactly.
grandmother would say, that's why they have Fords and Chivvies. Um, but then she came back, and then she came back week after week after week after week. And, I will tell you that that happens a lot. There are people who came to my class because they wanted to support me. As you know, I do a lot in the community. I have a lot of friends, and there were a lot of people that came to support me, which is just so beautiful. But there are people also that came back I wouldn't have expected. People who said, I'm just going to try your class, but I'm a tennis player, or, I don't do yoga, la, 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 la. And there are people who've come back week after week that are now like, oh my God, you have to try your class. It's the best thing ever. Like, I've changed my whole workout schedule around it because you feel really good. And that's what I
Yeah.
said earlier about you feel differently when the class is over. It's not like you have to come 15 times before you see a difference. Do you know what I mean? You actually, because it's the energy. We're moving the energy. You are actually like moving the bad energy out, resetting your nervous system, and like, you leave feeling better. The other thing that's been really, really rewarding is the number of things that people have taken with them from the class. I'm sure you've seen on the chat when they'll say like, oh, I loved that chant today. Can you put it
Yeah.
in the chat?
Yeah.
And you find out that people are listening to these, Kundalini Gurmukhi chants in their car and they're singing along. They're putting it on in the airplane. I mean, exactly what I do. And I just did it by myself. You know what I mean? But what's exciting is to be able to share it um, with people. And you know what I'm finding is, of course, the ego. We all have our preconceived notions. Oh, I'm going to throw this out to somebody, and they're not somebody who's going to like the idea of a chant. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know
Yeah.
why I make that up in my head. And that person is like, oh my God, I love it. I'm listening to it, all every day in my car when I go to work, and it's changing my life. So, the other thing that I've learned is just put it out there. I think I was very concerned, even though this is not how I learned. The Kundalini yoga tradition is that you come into class, they don't explain anything. You start with a chant, they don't even tell you what the chant is. You figure it out. And I just was like, I have a little whiteboard where I write the chant because we're Westerners. We would like to know what we're singing, even though you're supposed to just like go with it and go into the sound current. But like, you know what? Does it make people who grew up in the West feel better because it's like an entire thing they've never seen and heard before? Yes.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a lot of stuff that I try to do, or I don't try, I do in my classes that would be considered unorthodox by the old school teachers because it doesn't change anything. Just explaining to you why we do these things only makes the experience better.
And deeper, I would say, and
Yeah.
much more profound, and give you, I love that you impart again this knowledge, and that you the way you approached it in this incredibly rigorous way, you want to give that also to everyone who's taking the class. So yes, we're chanting this. and this is what it means. And so you're
Well,
giving
and even
people,
cooler than that is like, first of all, if you look at the world's religious faith traditions, not that yoga is a faith tradition, but everyone sings. Okay.
yeah,
We all sing. Okay. Okay. Then take it out of the faith tradition. You get in your car and you sing, or you sing in your apartment. It makes you happy because
exactly.
it raises the vibration.
Mhm.
Everything is energy. We are made of energy. When you sing, you are raising your vibration, you are changing your state.
Yeah.
Also, your body, like my body for me, your body for you, Fosca, is uniquely calibrated to change your body, to heal
Yeah.
your body. So you singing, humming, it's really funny because I actually despise humming, and my husband, not just humming, I don't mind. Whistling is something that I just
Mhm.
cannot
Yeah.
abide. Turns out whistling is like really, really, really good for you,
Oh, yeah.
and it resets your vagus nerve, and people who whistle are like
Oh,
have calmer nervous system. So it's really funny because my husband whistles all the time and I'm always like like I can, and since learning this, I'm like, how amazing is that?
but do you whistle? Because I also kind of can't really, like
I'm
when
not a
people whistle,
whistler.
it
We
annoys me.
whistle sometimes in class, and that's different, but no, I'm not a whistler in life.
Okay.
But I listen to the chants all the time. Something else that I learned that apropos of this sort of musicality is I love living in Florence because I hear the birds outside my window all the time. And I think it's the most charming thing in the world, like hearing these birds. And they get up early, but I get up early, so it doesn't really bother me. But someone pointed out to me that birds sing when there is no threat.
Ah,
They don't
so
sing
beautiful.
when they're in danger. And so now when I wake up and these birds are just like, I mean, I feel like the birds in Florence are the happiest birds. They're just singing, 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 singing. I'm like, oh my God, like the world is safe.
How beautiful.
Isn't that amazing?
It's beautiful. And I have to say, when you talk about your classes, I just, you're just giving me so much joy. Like and we need, and this is, I want to sort of get back to the woman who came into your class sort of post-election and
Yeah.
walked out probably because she was just like, there's a lot of noise right now, and there's so much going on, and the world is such a challenging place. And here you are, and talking about singing and chanting together, and moving around and making noise, and our bodies vibrating. And it's like it sounds like the most. It sounds like just what we need more of right now, and sort of bringing back this. Do you remember how much you sang when you were a kid?
Completely. It's funny. There's a couple of things we do. I say that all the time. There's a couple of things we do in class, and one of them is like when you're just on your back and then you need to get up. You bring your knees in and hug your knees and then roll back and forth. But it's also circulating the energy from going from laying down to recirculating the energy. In the beginning, I was just like, what? And now I can't wait to roll like a ball. But there are several exercises. Of course, it all escapes me right now, where you know what I have to say, and my teacher says this about my students without meeting them, but based on what I teach them, my students trust me implicitly. Nobody gives me a look like, really? What are we doing? Because sometimes Kundalini is like Kundalini. I mean, I told you that we like can hop like kangaroos and do all sorts of crazy stuff. But sometimes I tell them to do something, and I'm like, think about if you told your 4-year-old to do this. They would
Yeah.
be so
It
happy.
would be so excited. Your
And
4-year-old self.
I have a lot to say about the world being difficult right now, with regards to Kundalini and yoga and what we're doing. First of all, the class is so joyful. It's so much
Mhm.
fun. The community is amazing. It's so good for us as human beings on the physical, mental, spiritual level. It's not only good for our bodies physically for what we do, because spinal health, like literally the flexibility of your spine and your spinal health is the key to longevity. Um, and we do so much, spinal stretching in all different directions in class. Um, but this idea of the world right now and everybody being so acutely aware of how bad things are in the world. I'm not going to get involved in whether there have been other times in history, whether it was as good or as bad. But I do know that right now it's unprecedented. We've never lived with this much ability to know what's going on globally. And yet we're the same human beings with the same size brain. And we're receiving, they say, like, 500,000 more impressions every day than we were receiving, 40 years ago. I do know this, that when I look down and see where my feet are, everything is generally okay. Right here, right now, in this room, generally right here, right now, in Florence, Italy, I am leading a beautiful life. And it is a choice for me to spend my days caught up in what is going on across an ocean. That does not mean I'm not informed. And that does not mean that I don't have an opinion. I actually have to say that I've done so much yoga that I'm now at a place where I don't really have an opinion. So if you are seeking getting to a place of not having an opinion, I'm your girl. But what I will tell you is now more than ever, we need a way to decompress. We need a way to calm down. We need a space to leave everything outside. And so that is what this practice offers. And you know what? It's in a beautiful art gallery. As you can tell, I'm kind of a fun person. All the other people who come are fun. People go out for coffee afterwards. A couple times we do coffee right there at the BE's gallery, and we do breakfast. It's an amazing way to take the time for yourself and learn the skills that are most necessary in this time. The illnesses right now are civilization illnesses. They are a result of cortisol spiking. We have to learn how to regulate our cortisol. The biggest thing that you will get from this practice is to realize that you are not your mind. When you come to yoga and you start to move your body and do something repetitive for 2 minutes, you will see where your mind goes. You begin to observe what goes on so that now you can see that that's what your mind does outside.
Yeah.
What your mind is saying, I got you swinging your arms for 2 minutes, okay? And about 60 seconds in, you're like, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to die. Okay. And then in 30 more seconds, you hate me and you're never coming back. And then at 2 minutes is over, you put your arms down and nothing back, you're fine.
Yeah.
That's an entire arc of learning what our minds do to us. That sort of invaluable thing that you take with you that you don't even realize you take with you into the world.
Yeah.
So
this is everyone who's listening is going to flood your classes now, because I think between the spreading of joy, the sense of community, the time for ourselves, being present, and really owning our time, our bodies, doing good things for ourselves. These are things that it's not like optional anymore. These are things that we absolutely need to do.
there's also another part of this that I think is really, really important. What happens in yoga is that you calm down enough to go inside and build a relationship with yourself. There's a lot of conversation I've had recently about people about free will. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm all for free will. How free are you? Whose life are you living?
Yeah.
Because if you are not getting quiet and getting to know who you are, there is no free will. You're not leading your life. You're leading someone else's life. You are leading the imprint and the impressions and the things that your parents, sister, mom, dad, schools, society, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's one thing, because what we're doing is we are, and this is Ram Dass again, we are polishing the mirror of the soul so that we can see the reflection more clearly. You cannot know yourself unless you stop and take the time to clear out all the crud, see who you are. And that means, what are your wants? What are your needs? What do you want to do? How do you feel? Now, that all may sound lofty to people who are very, very busy and have big careers, and I don't need to know myself, and myself included. When I got sober 25 years ago and they would talk about self-love, I was like, yeah, lofty, whatever. Just I would like to learn to not drink and move on and have a big career. And then at 12 or 13 years sober. I had a baby. And then I find out that you can only love the baby in direct proportion to how much you love yourself. Because it goes back to I cannot transmit what I do not possess.
Yeah.
So then I ran to like learn all this stuff, which is not a straight line. You can't go to school for it. And anyway, that's a whole other story. But that's another podcast. But what I was going to say here that's so important about right now is with this idea of AI. So I can say that we've never experienced this before. We have AI. How are we going to know what is true? And it's happening very, 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 very fast.
Yep. And it's hard to know.
It's getting ready to be much harder. I already think it's hard to know. If you know yourself, if you are in touch with your body, we have what is called a gut brain. It is arguably way more, I believe, that our number one brain is in our gut.
For sure.
I know everything and I feel everything in my body. We all do, but we are not all attuned to it. I have no problem reading social media, the news, whatever, because I feel it in my body. I know what's true and what's not true very quickly. That is the key. That is one of the biggest reasons I would say that we absolutely all have to do this work. And I'm not advocating that my work is the only work. I'm not saying that Kundalini is the only route, but I am saying call to action. Get out there and find what works for you to calm yourself down and get to know yourself. Because if you can get back in your body, we are distracted, we are tired, we are ill, and we are not in our bodies. We got to get back in the body and then learn what the emotions are, excuse me, so that you can discern between what's true and not true. Because that's getting ready to be the biggest thing we've got going on.
Yeah. And you need to come back on the podcast and we're going to have a whole conversation about this. No, I'm not joking because I'm like obsessed with like right now. This is something that I'm thinking about a lot. I don't want to end this episode because I want to talk to you forever, but I do have two final questions for you because you're like
Sure.
infinite font of wisdom and I love talking to you. I feel just very fortunate to know you because I think what you're doing is exceptional. And I think, no, and I'm not just saying that. This is not like me paying lip service. Like, I truly believe that every word, first of all, you just have this honesty and this candor, which is so refreshing. And that you really want to make people feel good. That is a beautiful thing, Alatia. Like a beautiful thing because most of us spend a lot of time feeling bad. And so that's, a beautiful gift that you're giving. So thank you for that. And I thank you on behalf of all your devoted students and your friends. I want to know what teaching has taught you about yourself that you didn't know before.
Oh, wow. I was thinking about that. That was the question that I was like, what has it taught me about myself? You know what I've really, really learned is that I am a junkie for happiness. I really, really, really like walk towards the light all the time. I want to feel good all the time. I mean, I am a recovered drug addict alcoholic, so of course I want to feel good. But, I love this practice and it makes me feel good. And therefore I do it every day. And I think what teaching has showed me is that I can see people come and they feel better and then they don't come again. And I'm like, wait, what? You know what I mean? Like I have this joke where I say like, oh my God, you love my class and you've never felt this good in your life. Whatever you do, don't come back. Because and it's human nature. We do something to feel better and then we feel better and then we don't think we need it anymore. And so it's been really enlightening. I don't think of myself, you're going to find this really funny. I don't think of myself as a disciplined person. And I realized I was having this conversation with someone like 6 months ago. And I was like, but I wrote all my term papers like the night before. And they're like, Alatia, you're 56. Like you're judging yourself on what you did at university. But I don't. And truly, this is not a discipline to me. It is like a chasing the high. Does that make sense? Like
It totally.
I absolutely can't imagine not doing this because my life is so much better. And it started out that I would do once or twice a week or 3 times a week. And now I do it every day because the time it takes, this is the thing, if I could get people to do it committed, is that, why do I wake up 20 minutes before, like if I have to be up at 7, I wake up at 6:40 because I need to do this 20-minute meditation that I've done for, 20 years, because then the rest of my day will be amazing.
Yeah.
And I fall short. Last night I was up in the middle of the night because the kids woke me up and I was angry. And anyway, then I put on a chant and then I was lying in bed chilling out. And I realized, like, oh, because I haven't meditated in 3 days because we've had out of town company, we have jet lag, blah, 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 in there.
Sure.
Therefore,
Sure.
things are bugging me. But what I've really learned teaching is I've gotten to see human nature like up close and personal. I've gotten to see what I do and what because I'm seeing it through other people.
Yeah.
Um, and I've gotten to see that, what, the discipline, the freedom is in the discipline. And that is the hardest thing to impart to other people. Like, you have to do this every day, just the same way. And we weren't raised this way. The same way you take a shower every day, the same way you brush your teeth every day, the same way. This is well, they say meditation is like a shower for your brain. So, and by the way, I don't mean to, I absolutely am not saying, oh my God, if you're not going to come to my class, I don't even teach every day, but, multiple times a week, it doesn't count. That's not it at all. I just think that I would love for people to just come once a week if they want to come twice a week, or if they want to have a home practice, whatever it is. The biggest thing is start. The biggest thing is continue. But that is something that I've seen. I'm like, oh, wow. People come, they feel better, and then they don't come again, or, they don't come regularly. And I guess for me, sometimes it's hard because I want to say, you don't understand. This will be the life-changing piece.
Yeah. This is how you will live better,
Well, and it's also tricky, or not tricky, but I guess people tend to prioritize everyone but themselves. And they prioritize. So the priority is not, I very much live by that thing in the airplane. Secure your mask over your nose before you secure your child.
Yes.
If I can't transmit what I don't have, I cannot be strong for you. I cannot be a teacher for you. I cannot be a good parent, a good wife, a good whatever, unless I'm firmly rooted and grounded. So that's how I approach life, but most people don't. And so I've had to be very open. And I mean, it hasn't been hard for me. It's just been something I've noticed. I'm like, oh, wow, how can I say this in a way that will touch these people? Or how can I, because I want it for everyone. I want all my friends to get this,
Of course, because for you, it's changed completely the way you live your life and your understanding of yourself and how you are in the world. But you're exactly right. Like, especially for, I think, like my daughter's generation, your son's generation, I think they have more an awareness of it, but we were never told to take any time for ourselves. I don't know. I mean, I don't remember any time in my life where I was like, somebody said to me, like, oh, go take a nap or take a moment, to do something for your, to feel grounded or whatever. So I think it's something that we are now talking a lot about. But it's hard to undo those patterns, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. My final question, and we're going to put in the show notes all the information about you, when you teach, how people can find you, your biography. We'll do all those good things, but I want to know what's next for you, Alatia.
What's next? Well, I'm
Yep.
traveling with my family and my husband this summer, which is so exciting.
Yay.
And then we'll be back in the fall with class at the B East Gallery. I think there's going to be, I'm pretty sure this fall there will be more sort of series, like a series of 4 classes around a topic. There will be some Saturday classes, like a 90-minute Saturday class with a
Yay,
brunch
I can
afterward.
come.
I
I
know.
can come.
So I'm going to do some different things to mix it up. There will probably be a retreat that is not planned, and there will be another trip to India, again, not planned. This is completely off the cuff, but it's really important as I got into this and teaching yoga. And then because I come from New York and I come from the corporate world, I just started scaling because I only know how to do that. And all of a sudden I was like, whoa, I don't want to do any of this. And I've never experienced that where I put all this stuff on the calendar because I work great under a deadline. And I figured if I put down deposits and I did all this stuff and I booked the calendar and I told people all this stuff was going to happen, um, then I would have to back into it. And of course, I would get it done. And I had sort of a standstill. It's not dissimilar than how you're describing, wait, this must be what you're meant to do. And I didn't want to do anything. And it felt really wrong. And I didn't want to do it. And what I've come to learn is that this is not a service that I'm offering. This is not like getting a massage or going to the gym. This is a gift. This is a gift that I have, that I've refined, it's very important to me. And I want to be able to give the gift. I want to be able to share the experience. And so the rollout may not look very corporate, and I don't know exactly how it's going to go, but that's the reason. The reason is it's just I want to be able to share this gift with those who are around me. And I don't want it to become something that I feel forced to perform, and not really perform, but forced to sell. I don't want to put all this stuff out there so that then I'm back feeding it. I just want people to know about this thing and come and experience it. And if they want to all go, if they, 6 people want to go to India, let's go to India. If people want to do a retreat, let's do a retreat. If you want to, there's something I used to host at my house called satsang, which is, it means literally translated in the presence of capital T truth. And it was where like 15 women would just sit around and we would talk about really big things, or really not big things, like what's your morning practice? You know what I mean? That's big to me, but not like lofty. And so there's going to be more of all of that. I mean, I would say to the community, those people who already are part of my community and those people who aren't yet a part of my community, it's what we're doing here is exercising a muscle. And I, put the onus on you to exercise that muscle also. Like, come to class, call me, make time, because the more you put in, the more you will get out. The more you want the gift, the more I'll give the gift, the more you accept. Does that make sense? Because
Absolutely.
that's really what this sort of new calling has felt like. So that's what's next. It's sort of amorphous, but don't worry, there will be classes next fall.
Sounds amazing. Sounds amazing. I can't wait. I'm so excited to hear that there will be classes on Saturdays, so I can finally come and join.
Oh, and you know what else? There's going to be, I'm going to do some wellness. Is it wellness nights for Win?
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
So I'm going to do that with Donna. So definitely it'll be stuff that you can come to in the evening.
Perfect. And I'll be there. And I want to thank you again for.
Thank you for having me. This is such an honor.
You need to come back. Like, you'll come back after I've come to one of your classes. But also,
well, and there's a lot to dig into. I think that might be something we do for wellness, or we could even do it on your podcast, or we could do the same thing.
Yeah.
Which is, yoga involves so many different things. Yoga is a way of life. Mm-hmm. And there are 8 limbs of yoga, and the asana practice is only one of them. And they all lead up to being able to sit still in meditation, which is how you get to know yourself, which is how you calm yourself down, which is how you do deep repair of your body, your physical body. So there's so many different things that we can talk about in this realm. And, the thing that I love about the Vedas, this Vedic history, predates the Hindu religion. The Vedas were 7,000 years old. Some people think older. And it's not a religion. It was just a way to live. Ayurvedic medicine, that was the medicine.
Yeah.
I mean, those people presupposed quantum physics, because in Ayurveda, you do not name anything. Anything that's wrong with you is an imbalance that just has to be rebalanced. But they knew 7,000 years ago, if you name it, you focus on it, and then it becomes a thing. You collapse the wave. So, I mean, right there, if that doesn't sell you on the wisdom, I'm like, hello, we think we invented all this stuff? So yeah, there's a lot. I can come back. I love to talk.
You have to come back. First of all, I'm sold. But also we've just scratched the surface. Like, we have so much to talk about. And I knew this was going to happen. I told you this was going to happen. I said, when the two of us start talking, like, good luck trying to shut us up. So Thank you so much. I've learned so much. I feel so inspired. I'm grateful to know you. I feel joyous and grounded just having sat
Oh,
with you and chatted with you. I'm serious. So thank you for coming on the podcast. Thank you for everything you do. And just have a beautiful summer. And
thank
I
you
can't
so
wait.
much. I'm so honored. I adore you. I'm so glad you're my friend, and I can't wait for many more fun times in September.
I feel the same way. I can't wait. We're gonna do all amazing things this fall. Thank you for coming,
Oh,
Alicia.
thank you for having me.
Bye bye.
Bye.